The old library had been closed for years, its wooden doors swollen from rain and neglect. A cold wind whispered through the cracked windows, carrying a faint scent of mildew and dust. Officer Elena Torres tugged her jacket tighter, eyes scanning the shadowed aisles as K9 Orion's ears twitched, nose pressed the ground. Then a whisper, soft, almost human, slithered through the empty stacks. Orion's hackles rose, a low growl vibrating from deep in his chest. Elena's heart pounded. Something was here, something that shouldn't have been, and the dog knew it. The town of Millhaven had a way of swallowing people whole. Not literally, of course, but the quiet streets, the low fog that curled around cracked pavement, and the empty porches gave the sense that the town itself watched, waiting. Elena Torres had grown up here, though she'd left the city years ago, and returned only because duty or stubbornness had called her back. The old library, the one everyone whispered about but few visited, had been abandoned for nearly a decade. It smelled like rotten secrets, and the air was thick with a ghost of forgotten knowledge. Orion, her K9 partner, trotted ahead on his leash, ears alert, tail stiff. The German shepherd's instincts were sharper than most human senses, and right now, every muscle in his body screamed caution. Elena followed, flashlight in hand, beam cutting through the dust motes that danced like restless spirits. She tightened her grip on his leash, feeling the tremor in her own fingers. "The whole place feels wrong," she muttered, mostly to herself. Her voice echoed back, hollow and eerie, "but it's just an old building." Orion stopped abruptly near the center of the reading hall, nose lowered, eyes fixed on the darkened stacks. His growl was low, almost imperceptible, but it vibrated to the floor and into Elena's chest. She knelt beside him, running a hand down his muzzle. "Good boy, will you smell?" But Orion didn't respond with the usual wag of reassurance. His gaze flicked toward the far corner, where a row of shelves had collapsed, spilling yellow books onto the floor. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the draft seeping through the broken windows. The library had been rumored to hide more than dusty books. In Millhaven, old places carried old grudges. People had disappeared before, mostly kids and drifters, never found. Some blamed the town's eccentric librarian, a woman named Margaret Lorne, who had vanished without a trace one winter night. Others said the library was cursed. Elena didn't believe in curses, not exactly, but she had learned to respect instincts, her own and Orion's. And right now, both screamed at her that something was very wrong. She stepped carefully over the scattered books, noticing a thin layer of dried blood on the floorboards beneath the pile. It was faint, almost invisible under the dust, but enough to make her stomach churn. Orion's growl grew louder, a low rumble that vibrated in her bones. Elena's heart pounded as she followed his gaze. Then she heard a whisper. It was soft, so soft it might have been the wind or the creak of old wood. But it carried a strange cadence, like someone trying to form words in a language long forgotten. Elena froze. Orion's tail stiffened, ears pinned back slightly, and he let out a warning bark that echoed to the empty hall. Elena, her name came out of the shadows, not in a friendly way, not in a human way. There was no warmth in it, only menace. Her flashlight beam swung toward the sound. The shadows shifted, elongated, twisting as if alive. Elena took a step back, heart hammering, while Orion strained against his leash. Then she saw it, one of the books, open on the floor. Its pages were blackened at the edges, smeared with something dark. Words, written hastily in red ink, spelled out. "He watches. He waits. You cannot leave." A sharp crash in the back of the hall made her jump. Orion lunged forward, dragging her toward the source. She could hear his nails clicking on the wooden floor, hear the low growl that meant he had found something, and yet the shadows seemed to twist around them, holding secrets that refused to surface. "Elena, stop!" A voice called out from the doorway. It was Chief Harris, her superior, and the man she had once trusted implicitly. His eyes widened as he stepped into the hall, flashlight in hand. What are you doing here?" I don't know," she said, panting, her gaze flicking back to Orion. "There's something here. I can feel it." Harris frowned, his face tightening. "You shouldn't have come alone. This place is not safe. Safe? Elena laughed bitterly. You mean like the times people went missing? Like the whispers everyone denies? Harris's jaw tightened. There was a flicker in his eyes, a shadow that passed over his normally composed face. It's complicated, he muttered, his voice dropping. He looked away, toward the piles of books, toward the dark corners where shadows coiled like snakes. Just keep Orion close. Elena's got twisted. She had trusted Harris once. Trusted him to protect the town. Trusted him to keep secrets that couldn't be told. But now, standing in the decaying heart of Millhaven's abandoned library, she realized that trust had been fractured long ago. Orion barked again, urgent, pulling at the leash. Elena followed his lead to collapsed shelves, where the whispering seemed strongest. She crouched and pushed aside the books, her hands trembling. The pages underneath were filled with names, dates, scribbled notes that hinted at disappearances, threats, and betrayals stretching back decades. And then she saw it, a photograph torn and faded, showing a young girl standing with Margaret Lorne. The girl's face was scratched out. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Orion sniffed at the photo, whining softly, and nudged it toward her with his nose, as if telling her to pay attention. "What is this?" she whispered. Her voice trembled. Why would someone? Harris stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be here. Elena, you shouldn't have opened that." "Open what?" she demanded, turning toward him. "I need to know. This isn't just about the library. It's about the people who vanished, the secrets you've been hiding. I trusted you." His face hardened. "Sometimes protecting people means keeping the truth buried. You don't understand." Orion growled, low and threatening, ears forward, hackles raised. The dog was reacting not just to the building, but to Harris. Elena felt it. Something hidden, something wrong in the very air between them. The whispering came again, louder this time, curling around them like smoke. Words she couldn't fully make out, but the tone, cold, accusatory, hungry, cut straight to her bones. Elena realized the library itself seemed alive, watching, remembering. It held grudges as well as secrets. And now it had noticed them. Orion barked sharply and lunged forward, straight toward a shadowed alcove. Elena followed, flashlight trembling in her hand. The alcove was small, almost like a forgotten study. Inside, a chair lay toppled, papers scattered across the floor. And in the corner, she saw it. A small locked box, ornate, almost delicate, but with scratches and dark stains hinting at something far more sinister than it appeared. Her hand shook as she reached for the box. Harris stepped in front of her, firm, unyielding. "Stop. You don't get to decide this anymore," Elena said, voice hard. She ignored him and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled among old letters, was a single human hair, gray at the roots, brittle with age. And beneath it, a note written in Margaret Lorne's hand. "He knows. He remembers. And he will return." Orion barked, low and menacing, as the whisper turned into a chilling hiss, circling them. Elena swallowed hard, realizing that this was bigger than any of them had imagined, bigger than missing people or town secrets. Something had been waiting in Millhaven all along, something that had watched, hidden, and now it was awake. Harris stepped back, face pale. "Elena, we should leave." "No," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Not yet. We need to know the truth, whatever it is." Orion's growl rose to a snarl, and the shadows around them shifted. The library exhaled a cold, wet breath, as if acknowledging her resolve. And in that moment, Elena understood something fundamental. Once the past is disturbed, it will not let you go. The whisper came again. This time, it sounded almost like a warning, almost like a plea. "Run while you can." But it was too late. Elena's heartbeat thudded in her ears as the whisper faded, leaving behind a cold, empty silence. Orion's hackles were still raised, his growls low and cautious, scanning every shadow. The box in Elena's hands felt impossibly heavy, though its contents were light. A single brittle hair and a note. Yet the weight of history, secrecy, and unseen eyes pressed down on her. Harris stepped back, rubbing his face with both hands. "You don't understand what you're holding," he muttered. "This isn't just about missing people. It's bigger. It's dangerous." "I need you to explain," Elena said, gripping the box tightly. Her knuckles whitened. "I trusted you once, Harris, and I will not." "Trust me?" he interrupted, voice sharp. "You think you know me? You think anyone here is innocent?" Elena froze. His eyes were hard, guarded, almost haunted. The small-town facade of morality she believed in cracked in front of her. Orion barked sharply, and Elena realized he was staring past Harris, toward the far end of the hall where the shadows clung to a row of bookshelves like living things. Following the dog's gaze, she saw it, a figure, barely more than a silhouette, lurking just beyond the edge of her flashlight's beam. Her breath caught. "Who's there?" she demanded. No reply, just a soft shuffle of something moving, deliberate, careful. Harris's face paled. "You shouldn't have called it here," he whispered, almost to himself. "You shouldn't have opened that box." Elena's stomach twisted. "Called it? What do you mean?" The figure stepped forward. A man, perhaps in his 50s, gaunt and hollow-eyed, hair streaked with gray. His clothes were threadbare but neat, as if he had always lived in shadows. He raised a thin hand, shaking slightly. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, voice hoarse and brittle. "It's too late to leave." Orion growled, advancing between Elena and the man. The figure froze but did not flee. There was a strange recognition in his eyes, something almost human but tainted, as if he carried decades of pain and guilt in his gaze. I'm Officer Torres," Elena said carefully, hands raised but tense. "I'm just trying to understand what's going on here." "You don't understand," the man rasped. "You can't, not until you see it." Harris stepped closer, placing a hand on Elena's shoulder. "He's telling the truth, Elena. This man knows the library better than anyone. He's complicated." "Complicated?" Elena's voice rose. "Harris, stop dodging. Just tell me what's happening." The man's eyes flicked to Orion. "The dog, he knows, doesn't he? He smells it, feels it. Most humans can't." He took a trembling step closer. "I lived here for years, hiding myself, because they would have taken me otherwise. They took her, and they will take more if you keep digging." Elena swallowed hard. Who will take her?" The man's lips pressed into a thin line. "The ones who never truly left. The ones who remain in the shadows of this library, feeding on fear, keeping secrets. The whispers are them, always them. And now you've awakened their attention." Orion barked again, more urgently this time, and the air grew colder, heavier, as if the building itself were inhaling. Elena shivered. Something in the shadows moved, subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. She realized that the library was not just a building. It was a trap, alive in ways she could not yet comprehend. Harris's voice cut through the tension. "We need to leave. Now. The library remembers. It punishes curiosity." Elena shook her head. "I can't just leave. People went missing. Kids. Adults. And Margaret Lawrence, she didn't vanish. Someone made her disappear. I need to know why." The man exhaled sharply. "Curiosity has a cost, officer, and sometimes the cost is higher than any of us can bear." A sudden crash echoed from deeper in the library, making Elena jump. Books tumbled from high shelves, scattering across the floor. Orion lunged forward, barking, ears pinned. The shadows seemed to pulse, dark shapes stretching along the walls and ceiling as if alive. "Enough!" Harris shouted. "You can't fight it. You don't understand what you're up against." "I understand enough," Elena said, voice trembling but resolute. She knelt beside the scattered books and began flipping through the yellow pages, searching for clues. Each book, each note, revealed more of the town's dark history, disappearances, betrayals, blackmail, and rituals that twisted morality into something almost unrecognizable. Then she found a journal, its cover cracked, pages filled with meticulous handwriting. Margaret Lawrence's hand. Elena's eyes scanned the lines, references to a guardian of secrets, a watcher in the shadows, and cryptic warnings about someone who would return to see justice served. A knot formed in her stomach. Harris, she wrote about him. Whoever's been doing this, it's him, isn't it? The one in the shadows. Harris looked away, jaw tight. It's complicated. There's more than one. The library, it changes people. Some protect it. Some obey it. Some become it. Elena's head spun. Become it. Harris nodded grimly. People get consumed. Their morality, their soul, twisted. We tried to stop it, tried to control it. But the longer you're here, the harder it is to escape. The man in the corner shook his head. It's too late. The library chose her, and now it's choosing you too. Elena felt a cold dread curling in her chest. Orion growled louder, tugging at his leash. Something moved closer in the shadows, and the air thickened with the scent of decay and something metallic. Blood. She realized with a shock that the library had been storing more than books. It had been storing bodies, secrets, evidence of atrocities long buried. And the whispers weren't just warnings. They were invitations, summons, lures. Listen to me, the man hissed urgently. You can't trust anyone here. Not Harris, not me, not even yourself. They manipulate, they deceive, they wait until you're weak, and then his voice trailed off, leaving the threat hanging in the air. Orion barked one final, desperate warning, and Elena's gaze flicked to the dark alcove at the far end. A shadow moved there, impossible to identify, stretching impossibly tall, then shrinking, as if it were mocking their fear. Run, the man whispered again, eyes wide. Run while you still can. But Elena shook her head. She could not run. Not from the truth, not from people who had disappeared, not from Margaret Lorne. And as the shadows pulsed and whispered around them, she realized the most terrifying thing of all. She had already crossed the threshold. There would be no turning back. The library seemed to breathe around them, exhaling a cold, damp sigh that made Elena shiver from head to toe. Orion's growls reverberated through the hollow space, but even his senses seemed stretched to the breaking point. Every shadow appeared to pulse with life, twisting and stretching as if aware of her every heartbeat. Harris stepped closer, eyes flicking nervously to the dark corners. Elena, we don't have much time, he said, voice tight. Once the library decides, it won't relent. You've already awakened it. I don't care, she said firmly, gripping the box with Margaret Lorne's hair and note. Too many people have disappeared because of it. Too many secrets. I'm finishing this, whatever it takes. The man in the corner, pale and gaunt, shook his head. You can't finish it. The library isn't just a building. It's a repository of vengeance. It remembers every slight, every act of betrayal, every crime hidden under its roof, and it chooses who will pay. Elena swallowed hard, but she refused to back down. Then I'll pay if I have to, but I'll make sure it can't hurt anyone else. Orion barked, straining toward the far wall with shadows thickened unnaturally. Elena followed his gaze. There, half hidden in the folds of darkness, were shapes, indistinct at first, but growing more tangible. Figures of those who had vanished over the decades. Their faces were twisted in expressions of fear and accusation, eyes hollow, silent mouths open in wordless screams. A chill ran through Elena. No! Harris's face drained of color. This is why we couldn't stop it. The library feeds on guilt, on secrets. The longer someone remains, the more it absorbs. It manipulates even those trying to fight it. It can be destroyed, not completely. The man took a hesitant step forward. Margaret tried. She failed. The library is patient. It waits for the curious, the righteous, and the foolish alike. And once it has your attention, it doesn't let go. Orion growled louder, then suddenly lunged. A figure in the shadows recoiled, an almost human shape that shimmered and distorted as it retreated into the walls themselves. Elena gasped. The library had not just consumed people. It had twisted them, warped them into something unnatural, feeding on fear and regret until they became part of its essence. Harris grabbed her arm. Elena, leave now, before it decides you're its next. But Elena's gaze was fixed on the shadowed figure that had fled. Her mind raced. Names, dates, faces of those missing. How could she turn away now? A whisper curled around her, intimate, close, and almost pleading. You cannot save them, but you can remember them. Her hand tightened around Orion's leash. Then that's what I'll do, she whispered. I'll remember. I'll carry their stories. And I'll make sure no one else forgets. Harris's jaw tightened. That's noble, but it won't stop it. Not really. A sudden crash echoed to the library, books falling from high shelves. Shadows darted along the walls, coalescing into humanoid forms. The man whispered, voice breaking. It's feeding. The more fear, the more it grows. Orion barked again, alerting Elena to a new movement. A dark shape moved between the bookshelves, dragging itself along the floor, thin and sinewy, almost like smoke given form. It paused, and Elena saw a familiar feature, a necklace. The girl from the photograph, the one with her face scratched out, now a shadow, a whisper, a warning. Her breath caught. Margaret's girl, she muttered. The realization hit her. The disappearances, the shadows, the whispers, they weren't random. They were deliberate. Someone or something was orchestrating terror in Millhaven, and the library was its stage. Harris stepped forward, conflicted, hesitant. I tried to contain it, to limit it. I didn't want anyone else hurt. But sometimes, his voice trailed off, sometimes keeping the secret is the only way to survive. Elena stared at him, betrayal lancing through her. You lied to me. All these years. You let people disappear. You let them feed it. Harris flinched, but did not deny it. I did what I had to. You wouldn't understand. You wouldn't survive the truth. Orion barked and lunged toward Harris. Elena stepped between them, heart pounding. No more lies. I decide now, and we're leaving together or not at all. The shadows stirred again, almost in acknowledgement, almost in mockery. The air thickened, pressing down, almost suffocating, as if the library itself were aware of her defiance. Elena felt cold sweat run down her spine, her fingers numb. Suddenly, a bright flash of light erupted from the box in her hands. The brittle hair and note burned briefly, releasing a sharp smell of smoke and old paper. Shadows screamed, or did it feel like screaming? And then recoiled, retreating into the corners and walls. The library shuddered. The man whispered, almost reverently. The library acknowledges courage. Rare, fleeting. Harris stared at her, incredulous. How did you? I don't know, Elena said, voice trembling. I just refuse to be afraid. The shadows withdrew further, curling into the ceiling and walls, leaving the library eerily silent. Orion's growls faded to cautious whines, and the oppressive cold lifted slightly. Elena sank to her knees, catching her breath. Harris approached cautiously, unsteady. You might have saved them, in a way, but the library, it's still here, still waiting, still hungry. She looked at him, anger and exhaustion battling inside her. Then it's your responsibility now. You've seen it. You know what it takes to protect the town. I can't do it alone. Harris nodded, quietly, reluctantly, the weight of decades of secrecy pressing on him. I'll do what I can. But some things, some people, they won't ever be safe. The man in the corner, pale and haunted, began to fade into the shadows, his eyes filled with relief and sorrow. Remember, always remember. Elena stood, brushing dust from her clothes, looking around the silent stacks. The library had not been destroyed. It had not been tamed. But for now, the immediate danger had passed. The whispers were gone, or at least quieted. And she had survived, carrying the truth with her. She reached for Orion's collar, kneeling to press a hand to his head. Good boy, she whispered. We did it, for now. Outside, the fog hung low over Millhaven. The streets were quiet. The small town slept, unaware of the horrors lurking in its shadows, unaware of the courage it had taken to confront them. Elena and Orion stepped into mist, the first rays of dawn cutting faintly through the gray. Harris followed, distant but present, a silent acknowledgment of the fragile alliance now forged between them. The library loomed behind, dark and watchful, a sleeping predator, but one whose immediate hunger had been denied. Elena looked back one last time. The doors were closed, the windows dark. And in that silence, she felt a quiet, heavy triumph. They had survived. They had remembered. And sometimes that was enough. The whispers of the past, the secrets of Millhaven, and the shadowed horrors of the library would linger. But so would the courage of those who refused to be afraid.